Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I want to do a video about manual lenses with photography and video. I use a lot of manual lenses to get a lot of really cool different looks. If you know anything about it, manual lenses are lenses from the old film days. They're full format, 35mm format lenses that you can get used or you know, on eBay or whatever fairly inexpensively. So they're real handy in shooting portraits or shooting video where you know where your focus points are going to be. So I want to go over a video about using manual lenses. So one thing to note about manual lenses is they are manual. You're going to have to spin that focus ring and really nail the focus through the viewfinder or through a large screen you can zoom into to make sure, you know, if you're shooting a portrait, that the eyes are in focus. So they are manual. So make sure you want to invest some patience and some willingness to learn and experiment to get things right with a manual lens. I really think it's worth it. You get a lot of great looks. So let's get into the video. We'll cover some gear first, and then we'll cover some actual videos and portraits that I've shot with manual lenses. I'm not sure this is going to cover everything I want to cover with a manual lens in one video, but I want to get the conversation started. So if you would, please leave me a comment. Tell me what you want to know about these. We can learn these things together. Just let's engage and tell me what you think. Let's get into it. Okay, first things first, and that's how do you adapt a manual lens. If you get an old manual lens used at a yard sale, at eBay, whatever, they're all over the place. This one happens to be a Canon FD mount. This one happens to be a Nikon mount. You're going to need to purchase an adapter to go from whatever your lens mount is to whatever your camera mount is. I happen to have a micro four thirds camera, so that is my camera mount, and this being a Nikon F mount, I would need a Nikon F mount, this end, to a micro four thirds, this end. You can see the F mount's much bigger, the micro four thirds is much smaller. You just line up your red dots and you twist it on, and then you twist it onto your camera, and now it's mounted. And with the Canon, you have the Canon FD mount, and you have the micro four thirds side. So that just, Canon FD mount goes to the lens side, and then we could put that up into the camera at the same. So when I say it's all manual with these lenses, you need to set your aperture via the aperture ring, and that's what does your opening. And then you need to focus with your focus ring. When you have a manual lens on your camera, you have to configure it within your camera to shoot without a lens, is what it's called on the Panasonic Lumix. So you said shoot without a lens. I set mine on aperture priority, which is the A, and then I can adjust my aperture to whatever I want, do a manual focus, and shoot. Okay guys, here's a summary of my gear lineup. When I started out photography, or I should say, when I started out digital photography, video was not built into the camera body. It was all photos, and I started out on Nikon gear. I've had several point and shoots and several film cameras before that, and those were Nikon also, or some antique models that I like to play with. But for the most part, I started out with Nikon gear. And here's two of those cameras that I started with. This one right here is a D100, which my teenage son at the time used like crazy. And this one over here is a Nikon D40, which I used. And one of the reasons why I went with that camera was the rumor that it's a manual camera with a digital back. So what that comes down to is I could put any Nikon F-mount lens on there, put it in manual mode, and shoot all manual settings. For me, that was very beneficial because that gave me a chance to really practice and learn and dial in my settings. So, you know, if anybody wants to learn some stuff, that could be an option. Buy an old camera that you can shoot in manual mode and really learn. Years later, I switched to mirrorless format. I had an Olympus Pen EPL1, whatever, that I really enjoyed. I liked that camera, but it has some limitations for low light and It's a lot of stuff I won't go into, but that got me started in the mirrorless direction. Then I switched to the Panasonic Lumix cameras that are also mirrorless, micro four thirds format. Let me say that again, micro four thirds format. They have their advantages and disadvantages. The sensors are smaller, so you don't get probably as good depth of field as you could with APS-C type cameras like these. But I mean, they really have some awesome video capabilities. So, you know, that's kind of gave me the best of both worlds when I bought that. So that's why I went with that. But when it comes to shooting, I'm going to go over my lenses real quick. This one right here, it's a Nikon 50mm f1.4. So that means the aperture is really wide when you have a low aperture number. So 1.4 is a wide number. 22 would be a small number. So on 1.4, your hole is going to be this big around in your lens. On 22, it's going to be like that big around. So that's what the difference is in aperture in the most basic sense. So I will use this one a lot for portraits to get a real fuzzy background, let's call it. Next we have the old Nikon F mount, which is a Sigma 70-300. I use this for taking extreme telephoto shots, like basically of the moon. And let me just highlight one of those pictures here. I don't use this lens a lot, but I do use it for things like that. Now, to get into how we mount these lenses, if I'm using this lens on one of these cameras, then it just mounts right to it. But this one, since it's a Nikon F mount, is not going to mount directly to the micro four thirds gear. So what you have to have, let me get this cap off, is you have to have an adapter. So this adapter is a Nikon F to a micro four thirds adapter. You can get these adapters really cheap. I think these are about $12 to $15 on Amazon. I'll link to those in the description. So if I'm shooting pictures of the moon, I will use that lens, that 300, with an adapter. That's, you know, pretty much like a 600 focal length. And again, here's that picture of the moon. Another lens I have is a Olympus 35 to 70 lens. Now this has got the same type of adapter. It's got an OM, because these are OM mount lenses, the old Olympus ones. An OM to micro four thirds. This one I love for shooting video. I also did a portrait on an ocean with it. I'll put that one up here, that I think turned out really well. But I really like these for shooting video. It's a nice focal length for that. So there's another one. That lens was actually given to me. I didn't even spend any money on it. Somebody knew I was into photo and video and said, "Hey, I've got some old Olympus gear. Would you like it?" And sure, absolutely I would. And this is probably one of my favorite lenses for shooting portraits. This is a Nikon 50mm 1.8. But the difference is, let me flip this over so you can see it. The difference is this has an adapter on the back. The thing that's on the back of this 50mm 1.8 Nikon lens that I like to use, this is called a speed booster. I think Metabones was the first one to come out with a speed booster. That helps get some of your aperture back from the reduction that you get by putting an adapter on it. These are really full frame film lenses, so when you put them on a micro four thirds body, they don't exactly equate to the same aperture, and there's a big math problem out there for it, and I don't want to get into it. But this buys some of that back. So kind of advanced for if you're a first-time manual lens adopter, but keep it in mind. And here's a picture I took with this one, and you can kind of see the difference the way it takes care of the background. I was telling somebody not too long ago, if you could have seen the scene that was behind, this is my daughter I took a picture of, or one of her senior pictures. If you could have seen the scene behind it, you would say, why would you ever photograph anybody in this area? But with this speed booster, I think this turned out well. This is one of my favorite pictures, and yeah, it's my kid, that makes a difference, but I really enjoy that picture and the way it turned out. one thing you need to consider as you go into the manual lens area is you're going to have to be patient, and you're just going to have to be willing to learn new and different things. You're always going to have to focus manually, and that means turning the focus ring on these to get your subject into focus. So to do that, you're going to need a nice big screen on the back of your camera, or a nice viewfinder where you can zoom in and nail the focus. That was probably my biggest problem when I switched over to manual lenses. I don't have the best eyesight in the world, especially up close, so you got to figure out for you how you're going to get in there and nail your focus on the eyes when you're taking portraits, or on your actors when you're shooting video. Because when you open the aperture up, which is the main reason of using these manuals, it's a lot harder to focus, and your focus plane, the distance front to back, is a lot it's a lot thinner, let's call it. Like, say it would be this wide under f2.8, under f1.8 it's going to be this wide. So if somebody steps behind or in front of, they're going to be out of focus. So you have to keep that in mind. Let me just go through a couple of photos and videos that I've shot with these manual lenses. Okay guys, here's a couple pictures that I shot. These include some senior pictures. If you're not familiar with my other channel, DIY Senior Pictures, I also have a Kindle book out where I talk about taking senior pictures of your kids mainly. But as you can see, the backgrounds are blurry. The wide aperture will get you that with a manual lens. The focus is pretty good. I could always do better, but there's also some B-roll that I shoot. I just set the camera on the ground, or I set it on a tripod, and an event I'm shooting or whatever, I'll just shoot some movement, some people that are moving around, just to show, hey, this is what's going on. If we do a voiceover, we'll have some things to add in there. I think one thing I wanted to get across was, this is a new adventure, manual lenses, if you haven't done it before, so just get out there and give it a shot. I'm not sure I really got my point across good enough in this video. I was hoping to do it better, but I really want to get the conversation started. So why don't you leave a comment, let me know what you think, and maybe we can learn some of this together. I can go more in depth or not as in depth, whatever you guys need. So leave a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you would. Talk to you later.